All right, everyone, welcome back into another live edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Network, presented by our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks and Game Time. It is Brian Hines back as always with Alex Barth. Really kind of our first real true off-season show here because all the coaching stuff happened and now we're in the thick of it. Not the thick of it. We have a long way to go in this off-season, but it's been kind of radio silence down there at Gillette under this Mike Vrabel, in his first week here. We know he told us he started this process of hiring and reaching out and interviewing coordinators, but we haven't heard any news. Really, the only news we got was Tommy Rees, who was considered a reported favorite for this job. He worked with Mike Vrabel in Cleveland last year. He got promoted to the offensive coordinator spot with the Browns, so you can cross him off this list. But Barth, are you surprised? We heard from Vrabel on Tuesday on EEI literally say, I'm going to go back to my office and kind of start this coordinator search. We're 2 days in and we haven't heard any reported interviews. It's been pretty radio quiet there. Are you surprised with just that in general, that it has been so quiet so far?
I'm surprised with how quiet it is. I mean, literally nothing in 2 days is something. I'm not surprised that they're trying to do it more under the radar. I just think that's how Mike Vrabel's going to want to operate. Under Gerard Mayo, there was that whole theme of transparency and all of that. I don't think that that's a priority anymore, which may annoy some people. But at the end of the day, if it allows them to operate better, we all just want to watch a winning football team again, right? So let them do it. I would just remind everybody that just because there is no news, no reports, does not mean things aren't happening. For instance, last year, they interviewed I think it was 11 offense coordinators, right? 12 offense coordinators.
Van Pelt was 12, yeah.
Right, but that interview was not reported.
Yeah.
Remember that?
He just got
hired. We had this whole list of people they'd talked to, and then we find out on like a Thursday night, they hired Alex Van Pelt, who they had talked to the other day, and it just never got out there. So just because we're not hearing anything doesn't mean things aren't happening. That would really surprise me if we found out they haven't started the process yet, especially after what Vrabel said the other day. But they're clearly doing a good job of keeping it all under wraps. And, it could be a situation where we hear, next week, hey, we hired this person and we interviewed 8 others, and here's the list. And that happens. It's not super common, especially in the modern era in the social media age, and not for a position like offensive coordinator, maybe like a lesser position on the staff, positional coach. But just because we're not hearing things doesn't mean things aren't happening. It's just my guess. It's just not even a guess. It's just my take. I wonder if that's what's going on.
Yeah. So because there's not much, coordinator updates or coaching staff updates, we are going to turn it over to you guys in the chat. So if you have any questions about Vrabel, the free agency is going to start soon, Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl starts, draft questions, tons of that. You guys can start putting those in the chat. Speaking of those two kind of all-star games, college all-star games coming up, is that, do you think, the deadline for the coaching staff, or do you have a deadline of where you would say okay, we want to at least have maybe our offensive and defensive coordinators by this point? Vrabel really didn't want to put a timeline on it, but would you be okay, we'd at least want our offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator to be determined by the time we're going to the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl in 2 weeks?
I mean, I think you want to have the bulk of your staff at that point. If it's still assistant positional coach, this or that, whatever, but because you want to have your coordinator certainly by then. And I would say positional coaches for some of what are going to be the more focused positions in the offseason. I wouldn't even say the biggest positions, because I don't know how much you need your quarterback coach to go down there when, if you are drafting quarterback, it's later on, but your offensive line coach or coaches, wide receivers coach, that's going to be the big one. Once they get offensive coordinator locked in, that's going to become the new focal point, like quarterbacks coach was last year. So I think you want your coordinators by then, because you also need to know, what kind of system are we going to be running, right? Are we going to be, West Coast? Are we going to be EP? Are we going to be, because you got to know what kind of players you want for the system, and you want to evaluate players through that lens when you're down there. So I would think by the start of those games, and that's in 2 weeks. If there's nothing in 2 weeks, I will be shut. Then it's alarm bells ringing if there's nothing in 2 weeks. But I don't think you needed to hear anything this week. I wouldn't say they're behind schedule or anything, unless they truly have done nothing on the staffing front. But like, how could they have nothing else to do right now?
I know that's literally all their focus is on right now, because especially because Elliott's here in the personnel department. Like, they've done a lot of the legwork during the regular season of the draft stuff. Like, there's no catching up to do in that department. So literally Mike Vrabel right now needs to figure out his coaching staff. Like, that is what he's up to doing. There was one kind of thing, and Jason points it out here in the chat, with Drew Wilkins, who was the Patriots outside linebackers coach this year. He was named the defensive coordinator for the East West Shrine Bowl today. Was that of interest to you? Do you think he'll continue to have a position with the Patriots? Is that like a sign that maybe he's hanging on here? But did you read into that Drew Wilkins news at all today?
I mean, good for Drew Wilkins, and we know he was on the NFL Network list of like up and coming coaches, so it makes sense for him to be targeted for a position like that. It's not a guarantee that he's sticking around. We've seen Patriots coaches do this in the past and then either get reassigned or just leave, right? Like Troy Brown last year. Where was it Troy Brown last year?
He's the offensive coordinator.
He was at the Senior Bowl.
He was
at the Shrine Bowl, but
he was Joe Milton's offensive coordinator, because remember we kept saying like, let him throw the ball deep downfield, and Troy Brown just kept calling like screens in these short passes.
Right. So, and then obviously like he got reassigned. So good for Drew Wilkins. I don't think it doesn't signal one way or the other about his future. I think that's an opportunity. You know, they label him with that job because that is his current job, but he could just as easily leave, you know, during or after the Senior Bowl. So or he could stay. Like, I wouldn't read too much into that. They don't know who the defensive coordinator is going to be right now. The defensive coordinator and Mike Vrabel are going to pick the linebackers coach. So maybe Mike Vrabel really likes Drew Wilkins and he's here. And that could be true without him going to the Senior Bowl. I don't think it's, I really like this guy, so I'm going to get the Senior Bowl to pick him as defensive coordinator. That's all independent of this to me.
Yep. Well, kind of on that topic, Andrew asks, what coaches, really, if any, do you think will stay from last year?
So I think off the top, you just look at the guys Mike Vrabel has experience with. Bob Bicknell was the tight ends coach in Kansas City for a year when he was there. And obviously even in Kansas City, he caught passes. He did that kind of goal line tight end thing. So you figure he knows Bicknell a little bit. And that was a good group last year, right? A good room. So maybe he gets a chance to stay. He worked with Tom Quinn. Tom Quinn was his special teams coordinator in Tennessee, currently the assistant under Jeremy Springer. So does he promote Tom Quinn? Does Tom Quinn kind of tell him like, hey, the setup works and it's him and Springer back? Maybe something like that. I would say both of those guys are in a position to stay. And the other two guys that I look at are Mike Pellegrino, who we know is a damn good coach, and I'm sure they'd love to keep. And if he's not going to Chapel Hill, Brian Belichick has been a good coach as well in that safeties room. So those are maybe, and a guy that Vrabel's familiar with too. So beyond that, Alex Van Pelt's kind of the wild card. I really have no clue sort of where he goes from here. He has gotten fired twice in 2 years, but neither time he was really at fault. It was kind of just, he was in a bad situation. So, you know, he wants to be a head coach, right? But you got to be aware of how you're perceived league wide if you're trying to get to that position. So does taking a demotion here hurt your stock more than, you know, if you go somewhere else to become a quarterback's coach, it's a step back, but it's not technically a demotion. Does somebody want to make him an offensive coordinator? But if he does go elsewhere, he's not with Drake May. Is he going to have the same level of success? Does he just go do media for a couple of years? I've heard some people suggest that, you know, he kind of has that personality and enough connections that he can do that. So yeah, he's kind of the wild card, but Bicknell, Pellegrino, Quinn, Springer, Brian Belichick are the guys I look at to possibly stay.
Yeah. It felt like maybe the best path for AVP staying was Tommy Rees, right? Just because of the Cleveland connection and that similar offense. Like, if Tommy Rees comes in as your offensive coordinator, maybe you can convince AVP to hang around in a quarterback role, like a quarterback coach role, if he doesn't have offers elsewhere. So maybe that ship has kind of sailed, but definitely agree with the special teams. The connection's easy there. And that was, you know, probably their best unit last year as a whole, the special teams unit. And then we've talked a lot about Mike Pellegrino, and I guess with Brian Belichick, like every day that passes that he doesn't announce that he's going down to Chapel Hill or someone reports that, like the odds increase that he'll come back to Foxboro. So we'll wait and see on that.
And they hired the guy from Washington, that defensive backs coach from
the
Washington.
defensive backs coach. So
yeah.
All right, some off-season questions.
Yeah,
T. Higgins or Brown?
AJ Brown, not even close.
AJ
Brown, not even close. It's ask me AJ Brown or DK Metcalf. That one's a little tougher because I think Metcalf isn't going to cost quite as much, and I think they're more comparable players. I know Brown's going to be a lot more expensive than Higgins. I don't care. That guy, you can get that guy. That's a real. Higgins is a really good receiver, but we've never seen him do it as the number one guy. We've seen AJ Brown on multiple teams in multiple systems in multiple scenarios just dominate. And that's my whole theme for the wide receiver position this offseason, Brian. You've heard me say it. You guys who watch the show have heard me say it. It's all about the most proven commodity they can get. I want the most proven high-level commodity they can get.
Especially at that position.
Well, no, specifically for that position, that's how I feel. So AJ Brown all day, easily. Yeah. And I still don't think Higgins is going to be available.
Do you think AJ Brown will be available? Do you think there's any smoke there? We know Vrabel loves him the way he was talking about him on the radio the other day.
I think any player in theory is available via trade. So I guess in that sense, I shouldn't say Higgins is unavailable. But yeah, I think if you name the right price, it's possible. A lot of it depends how they feel about Devonta Smith. If you're a Patriots fan, you want Devonta Smith to just play super well down the stretch here. Because do the Eagles kind of look at that? Because they haven't paid him yet, right? So do the Eagles look at...
They paid him last offseason, maybe? I think he got like one of those 3-year big money extensions.
Didn't he get one of those, like, it's like a transition deal though, right? It's not... Yeah, it's void year heavy. All right, so he was paid. But do the Eagles look at it and say, all right, we can make it work with Devonta Smith. We need other options. Let's go to... Let's see if we can move on from AJ Brown. Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? You'd probably have to give up a first round pick for him, right? So then it becomes like, how do you, if they're sitting at 4, like you're not trading 4 for AJ Brown, obviously.
No, you trade
38's probably not. Is it like 38 and 69? Or if you end up trading back from 4 and you pick up another second round pick, then it's like 2 second round picks. Like,
so I would try to trade 2 second round picks. Isn't bad, especially like the one I look at. And Brian, you tell me if this is not enough for the Raiders, because the trade chart says this isn't fair, but like past history says it might be more fair. 4 for 6 and 37, and that's the whole trade.
I know it's not fair on the trade chart, but they're probably doing that for like Shador, right?
It's because it's for quarterback.
You get the quarterback boost. So I think that would be fair. Yeah.
So if you can do that, like the combination of 37 and 38 back-to-back is fascinating to me.
That can trade you up to like 16, 17. Maybe?
It can get you just up inside the top 20. You could trade one of those for a player and still pick in that spot. The other thing I would say, if you're looking at AJ Brown specifically and the Eagles say, no, we want a first round pick, you trade 38 and 69, I think gets you to like 22. And then you trade, this is what the Vikings did last year. And then they didn't end up making the second trade, but you trade 38 and 69 for like 22. I think 22 Seattle. At that point, I might just ask for DK Metcalf, but 38 and 69 to Seattle for 22. And then you trade 22 to the Eagles. So you've essentially traded your second and your third, but the Eagles wanted a first. So you try to find a team like somewhere in the early 20s that's like, you know what? Yeah, it's not a great class this year. We'll pass on the first round. We'll take the volume, something like that. So
if they get
that would probably be how you do it.
If they did the trade with Vegas, so they say they got 6 and 37. If you package 37,
22 is the Chargers. They would absolutely do something like that.
Yeah.
Or 23 is the Packers. That's also right out of their playbook.
And 24 is Minnesota, who has like 3 draft picks this year, so they might be looking to
another
move back
good one.
More. But if you do have 37 and 38 trade chart wise, you could get up to 15 overall.
That's true, but we're also, the trade chart says that you can't make that trade that I laid out. So, but like, let me ask you this: if you're the Raiders, so like if I'm the Patriots and I'm sitting there, I either want 6 in the future first, or 6-37?
Yeah.
Which one would you rather do if you're the Raiders?
Probably 37, because I think they
Right.
still have their whole assortment of picks after that this year.
Right.
Or at least they have their 3rd and 4th rounders. So.
I don't know for sure that trade's in play. Because it is, there's some historical context that suggests, but it's not like one of these, like, remember last year I just kept hammering the Niners trade. Like, there isn't one of those. You kind of have to get creative to get it to line up. But it's not totally out of the ballpark. So, and you can't just like ask it like in a press conference, like, would you do this trade? Right. So I don't know how we find out how applicable that trade is, but I can't escape from that thought that if you could get that extra second to move to 6, especially because Abdul Carter is probably going to be off the board at 4 to begin with. So you're really only giving up one player. You're giving up whoever goes at 5 because you assume the quarterback's going at 4, right? That puts you in really, really, really good shape. And it's the Jaguars at 5. And frankly, they're probably going to be in on a corner, which isn't necessarily a first round need for you. It's a need, but you don't need Will Johnson, right?
Yeah.
So you're in kind of good shape there, but I don't know.
Yep.
We'll see if it could actually happen.
Keep reading on the sidelines, AJ Brown. Keep reading. All right, there's lots more draft stuff to get to, but very quickly before we do that, I want to tell you guys about Prize Picks right there. Let me hide this comment so we can see Prize Picks. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash, and you guys can run your game all season long on Prize Picks this playoffs. It's now or never, so don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action. With playoffs, again, the best place to win cash while watching the NFL playoffs, where you can win up to 1,000 times your money, and Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes, and Prize Picks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Barth, do you have anyone divisional round weekend that you are eyeing on our prize? We got to do a Prize Picks lineup this weekend, so we don't have to do a six person lineup if we don't want to. But anyone?
Come on, no, we're keeping that going.
Okay.
Lamar, I think Lamar's on a heater. I like Lamar. I think he's gonna have a big game.
Lamar versus Josh Allen will be a great one. 220.5 pass yards, 54.5 rush yards, or rush touchdown, 1.5 pass touchdowns from Lamar.
I like that. 54. Is that just rush yards for just Lamar?
Yeah.
54. I like more on that.
Okay. Lamar 54. Let's put Josh Allen in. Let's see. Let's have them go at it. Or they do have Josh Allen plus Lamar Jackson 99.5 rush yards.
Oh, yeah. I like more on that.
Okay. We'll do more on that too. Who else? We have the Lions. Lions are playing the Commanders. Jaden Daniels has been red hot. Let's see, 236.5 pass yards. He's probably going to have to 34.5 pass attempts from Jaden Daniels. Daniels and Goff, 508.5 pass yards combined. Are they throwing the ball that much?
I mean, it's indoors. I can see that.
All right, we'll go more.
Right.
Who else is playing? Chiefs,
Houston and the Chiefs.
Chiefs, Texans.
I feel like Mahomes could throw a pick in this.
I was literally just thinking that. More than half an interception. 2 more. Yeah. Oh, let's do AJ Brown. Let's throw AJ Brown.
Oh yeah. We got to get future.
Are they going to? Are they going to force AJ Brown the ball after he only had like 1 catch last week?
That usually does happen.
He's at 5 receptions or 69.5 receiving yards for AJ Brown.
I like more than 5 receptions.
All right, they'll force.
And then what's Devonta Smith at?
Devonta Smith is at 54.5 receiving yards, 4.5 receptions.
Let's go less on the receptions for him. Let's say they flip it.
All right. So there's our 6. Lamar Jackson, more than 54.5 rush yards. Lamar and Josh Allen, more than 99.5 rush yards combined. Jaden Daniels plus Jared Goff, more than 508.5 pass yards combined. Patrick Mahomes, more than half an interception. AJ Brown, more than 5 receptions. And Devonta Smith, less than 4.5 receptions. Of course, we got our 25 time multiplier. So a $20 entry fee wins $500. And if you guys download Prize Picks apps today and use code CLNS, you get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup on Prize Picks. Run your game. We'll make sure to put that lineup out before the divisional games kick off on Saturday, and you guys can play along with us. We're hot. We've won for our last one. We've won our last one.
I mean, we're rolling.
We are rolling right now. So hopefully we can keep that success going. But let's roll back over to the chat here. There were some couple draft questions. Oh, this was a quick, easy one. After Vrabel asked Evan what his favorite play was, if Vrabel asked you, Alex, what your favorite special teams play was, what would be your response?
I mean, well, but it's different because, right, that was more like a concept type thing. I guess my favorite like concept is not really a play. I'm a fan of the old coffin corner punt. It's kind of a lost art, but just knock the ball out of bounds, not have guys go down there and down it, but knock the ball out of bounds inside the 5. If I had to give my favorite like special teams play though, it's the drop kick extra point. It's the Doug Flutie drop kick. So that being said, I don't necessarily need to see them run that. I don't necessarily want to see them run that, but that's my favorite. So it's a little different than how it worked with Evan.
Yeah, it's a little more, not as many options to pick from. But all right, let's get back to the draft. Let's see. There's someone talking. Why do people say that we should draft an edge rusher early on? Did they not watch our O-line last year? I'm guessing this is the Abdul Carter versus kind of Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks debate.
I would say, did you watch the defensive line last year?
Did you watch the pass rush last year?
Was it they had, outside of that Bears game, they had, I think, 19 sacks in 16 games, something like that, 18 sacks in 16 games?
Yeah. It wasn't good.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was scheme-wise, too. Like, they went from one of the best unblocked pressure teams in the league to really low, but they need a difference maker on that edge. And that, like, when you're talking about the top of the draft, like, best player available in a sense, and that is probably Abdul Carter over Will Campbell or Kelvin Banks. So,
right,
you don't want to force something, especially at the top of the draft there.
It doesn't mean they don't need a tackle, and it doesn't mean you can't talk about a tackle at the top of the draft. It's absolutely fair, but like it's just where they're at. You have to talk about more in one situation.
Definitely. Let's see. Everyone's debating that now.
Yeah. Although I will say this, somebody said there's a thing called free agency. If Abdul Carter's there for you, have to take him. Look, if they can get it done in free agency, like get a tackle, then great. The guy has to be there. And right now it's Cam Robinson, who is serviceable.
Struggled.
Yeah. He's your best option. Like, you still haven't definitively solved that. So it's a nice thought. Yeah, just sign the starting tackle in free agency and draft Abdul Carter. The starting tackle might not be in free agency. There might not, like, the guy might not be there for you to sign. So, and I don't think you're getting Colton Miller away from the Raiders either.
Your best hope is probably Ronnie Stanley from the Ravens, or Alaric
to Baltimore,
or Alaric Jackson from the Rams, who will probably try to keep him too. So
right.
that's
these teams don't let quality left tackles get away. If you want a quality left tackle, you really got to go to the draft.
Yeah.
So,
this is a good one. Anyone you are looking forward to seeing at the Shrine/Senior Bowl in particular?
Is there anybody let me think. I mean, some of those tackles, Josh Connolly, Ariante Ursary, getting that thing sorted out. I'm trying to figure out if Robbie Oots is going to the Senior Bowl or not. I've seen some people tweet about it, but he's not on their accepted invites list. But I'll have a ton of fun watching him if he's out there. Hybrid tight end fullback from Alabama, guy that I'm really excited about. I don't know if you're familiar with him, Brian. Guy that I'm really excited about since Mike Vrabel's recent comments.
You sent us a bunch of his videos the other day.
Yeah, that's right. I did, because I want everybody to know who he is. 6'2", 270, high school swimmer. So he's got like that build. He's just a tank. And mainly played tight end at Alabama, but he talked about like, yeah, I know I'm probably a fullback at the next level, but he is like athletic. He's not like a, I think a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with this, it's just different style. Like James Devlin, former defensive end, he was kind of like a guard, like a small guard in the backfield. That's not what Utz is, but he's not an H-back either. Like, he's not Jaheim Bell. He's much bigger and more physical than that, and he's more stiff. Like, I almost kind of look at him like a Patrick Ricard type. So, because Ricard's like a sneaky athlete.
Yeah.
People don't realize for his size. So, that's a guy I'm excited about. But yeah, mainly the tackles, Ursary, Connerly, these day 2 guys, where are they at? Or late first round guys, they trade back up, where are they at? Getting answers on those guys will clear a lot of things up in terms of the Patriots draft picture. So I think as a Patriots fan, that's what you're looking for the most at the Senior Bowl.
Even some of those guys you see that are popular in like the second round range, like Gray Zabel from North Dakota State.
So I'll say this about Gray Zabel, and let me throw Wyatt Milam on here too, because
that's where I was going also. Yep, with him.
I think a lot of Patriots fans just look at it and they want the shiny toy at the top, whether that's Abdul Carter, whether it's Ted McMillan, whether it's Travis Hunter, and then so they go into the mock draft simulator and then they just best ranked tackle left, boom, draft him, and it's, oh look, I solved the tackle thing. Zabel's a guard. Zabel is going to be a guard in the NFL. You look at the way a lot of people around the league talk about him. He's a guard. Milam might be a center. Like, he's probably a guard, and there's a chance he takes one further step into center. So those guys are not answers. Those, if you're whining about, well, I don't want to take Will Campbell at the top. I don't want to take Kelvin Banks at the top. Those guys are guards. But then, like, you're fine taking Zabel or you're fine taking Milam in the second round. You're just taking a worse version of the guy you don't want to take at the top of the draft because you're worried about his position. So, and for what it's worth, I think they're different. I think Banks is a tackle. Campbell, we'll see on the arms. We will see on the arms with Campbell. If he's at 33, I think he's a tackle, but we'll see. Banks is a tackle. I still don't get where that's coming from. It's been explained to me. I just don't agree with it. But Milam and Zabel are guards. Those guys are not answers. If you want to talk about Ursary, you want to talk about Connerly.
Are Milam and Zabel just arm length? Are they just short arms?
Arm length, and with Milam, it's kind of movement ability as well.
Just giving up the corner and stuff like that.
If you want to talk about the tackles in that range, bottom of the first, top of the second, you're talking about Connerly, you're talking about Ursary, into the second round. Is it Belton, the kid from NC State? I was kind of looking into today. Anthony Belton. Do you know who I'm talking about? He's one of these, like, just massive. He's like 6'6", 330, arms long as hell. It's not DeJuan Jones, right? He's not Trent Brown. He's not that kind of guy, but he's a big mauler. Now, they may want more of an athlete at left tackle than the big mauler. That's traditionally more their right tackle, especially if it's Josh McDaniels. But he's a player to talk about. And then the other guy in there is Josh Simmons. I've kind of said my piece on Josh Simmons. He's the right fit for the right team. The Patriots are not the right team. They need a guy who can come in and contribute, and a guy that's coming off of a knee injury that it sounds like could be pretty severe. It's just not worth the risk. You don't need to draft Dominique Easley. You don't need to draft Malcolm Mitchell to play left tackle on this team. Because if you do that, people say, well, okay, then you sign a bridge starter. All right, well, you signed a bridge starter, so that's your starter. So now you're using a top 50 pick on a guy who you're not expecting to be on the field, and this team needs all their top 100 picks to be instant hits. Like, if they're really going to try to get back to 500 this year, you have 4 top 100 picks. They all need to be contributors. A guy coming off a bad knee who may need to wait a year to play is not the answer for you. 4 or 5 years ago, yeah, that would have been an excellent value pick for them. They're not in that position anymore.
Yeah. I think I'd be a little more open to him if they got someone to kind of hold down the 4 at left tackle.
Right, but why not just have that guy play for the year and then draft another good tackle, probably a better tackle who doesn't have a bad knee next year?
I get it, but it's like whoever you're signing, like, probably isn't a long-term answer. This, like, Cam Robinson, you're not giving like a 4 or 5 year deal. Ronnie Stanley's like 31. He's had some injury history in the past too. So, like, none of these guys you're signing, ideally it's probably like 1 to 2 years. And then if you have Josh Simmons, who might be the best left tackle in this draft, then he can kind of work in. So I could see both pass, but I'll like use the pick on defensive edge, right? And get a pass rusher at the top of the round 2, and then look back into next year's left tackle market.
Right. Like Josh Sims is a good player, but you can get that guy next year. And if the plan is to not have him on the field till next year anyway, well, now you're kind of burning that pick if you're going to have a bridge guy.
Yeah. So definitely a lot of the tackles will be interesting at the Senior Bowl. The receivers are always fun to watch. Receivers, corners, one-on-ones. There's some good ones going down there. Taylor loves himself some Pat Bryant, Jaden Higgins, Iowa State, Jalen Royals, Utah State, Xavier Restrepo. We're probably all going to love Xavier Restrepo. Some good pass rushers, corners. Azarie Thomas, Florida State. I really like him late round or midday corner. He'll probably move up the board, but
I'll say this:
good rosters this year.
Yeah, I think he's at the Senior Bowl. Oddly enough, the Shrine Bowl is really good tight ends and receivers, by the way. Is Savion Williams at the Senior Bowl?
I
was looking at this earlier and I can't remember if he was there or he was just listed around the guys who were there, but I was doing some work on him the last couple of days. I'm kind of fascinated. Okay, so maybe he's not. That'd be the perfect kind of guy to go to that. I don't know how familiar you are with him, Brian. I don't know that he's the answer at wide receiver. I don't think he's the answer at wide receiver, frankly, but just to add some juice to the offense, 6'4", 225, plays receiver, tight end, and running back. He's kind of like a more explosive Cordero Patterson. And if you get one of these more creative offensive coordinators, like we've seen Josh McDaniels struggle with scheme touch guys, so maybe not him, but if it's somebody else, like if Mike Vrabel goes back to the offense he ran in Tennessee, kind of as like Jonnu Smith, but with a more expanded role, right? A guy that I just watch him. It's like when you get the ball in his hands, it's a man versus boys. It's not just straight line speed. He should not be able to change direction as well as he does at his size. So he's incredibly technically raw. Again, I don't think you're drafting him to get your answer at receiver. But if you want to get creative and have kind of a fun tool in the toolbox, he's really interesting.
How hard is he going to get helmet scouted to Quentin Johnson?
People would be so incredibly wrong. I see where you're coming from, and it might happen.
If you literally just helmet scout him with like the long hair too, like he looks like him, but
could really not be more opposite. Could not. Quentin Johnson, you need a calendar to time him coming out of a break. And with Savion Williams, it's not to say he doesn't have his own issues, but he moves well. He moves well for his size.
Like he's 6'4", 6'5" too, right? So
6'4", 225, yeah.
He's a big guy like that too. So he's gonna get helmet scouted hard.
That's unfortunate. Who's gonna be? Oh, who was it? There's somebody in this draft that I was thinking the other day is gonna be like the worst helmet scouted player in the draft. It was somebody towards top. I can't remember, but anyway.
Well, last year we had to deal with the Drake May, Mitch Trubisky stuff, which was fun. But
there was a lot of that last year, wasn't there? Well, Abdul Carter's getting it a bit with
Parsons
in the other way. With Micah Parsons. Like, look, I think Abdul Carter's a really good player. I do. I think he's a fantastic player. He's not Micah Parsons. It's just he's not.
Yep. If you had to move back into the first round, who is your target? Matthews is Tyler Warren. I think a lot of those tackles we just talked about, considering you go elsewhere early on, like Josh Connerly would be on the top of my list. I am a fan of Tyler Warren, but anyone else, if you're moving back into that, say, mid-20 range, that's on your eye and trade up talk.
I don't think Tyler Warren's going to be there. That'd be great, but I don't think he's going to be where
he's
they
not
can
getting past the Colts at 12.
I don't think so. It's the Colts, and aren't the Colts at 14?
Maybe it's 14.
The Colts. Do the Niners kind of look at it and say, Kittle's on the back end? The Bengals have been looking for a good tight end for a while, so I don't think he's going to be in that range. I mean, it depends who you're taking, or who do you take at the top, right? Obviously you're not going to double up, but in that range, I look at some of the tackles. I look at Connerly. I look at Ursary. Pass rusher at that point, I might stick at 38 or just move up minimally because I think there's so many good pass rushers in that 20 to 50 range. Although if they really like somebody like Jack Sawyer, maybe you move up. The other one would be Luther Burden. If Luther Burden starts to slip, do you go up and get him especially if you've added a true X. If you've added a guy like T. Higgins, like A.J. Brown, like DK Metcalf, putting Luther Burden with him as your Z, and then Pop Douglas in the slot, that's a really good wide receiver room. So it's going to depend on who they take at the top, but there's options if they move up into that range.
Yep. I would love Luther Burden. I just don't know if he's going to make it to that range, right? You have the Cowboys who are up there who could use them. Maybe the Bengals if they lose T. Higgins. So I would love him. Emeka Ibuka in that same type of story, right? Get another one of those receivers. So those would be who I was kind of looking at if you trade up into that range. We have another player trade reuniting with Mike Vrabel. Any interest in trying to trade for Jeffrey Simmons, who we all saw like that tweet reuniting with Mike Vrabel? I don't know what he would cost. I think the best comp maybe DeForest Buckner a few years ago, who went for a first-round pick. Like he went for the 13th overall pick. So this is kind of like the A.J. Brown stuff we were talking about, where you might need to move up and then trade a first-round pick. But would you have interest in trying to go get Jeffrey Simmons, who we all saw this year, how dominant he can be along the defensive line?
He's a hell of a player, man. He's a hell of a player. Like you said, it's probably going to cost too much. He's a big piece of what Tennessee does. But I mean, I'd take him here. He's a good player, hell of a player.
Yeah, just might be tough to get him. But
yeah.
Let's see. We got a ton of people in the chat arguing about tackles and guards and edge players. Just
to be clear, like just because we say you shouldn't take somebody with 4th overall doesn't mean you don't need to add that position. It doesn't mean that position is not a top priority.
I know.
It's gonna be a long 4 months.
Oh yes.
I miss when they'd pick like in the 20s, the 30s.
Life was so much easier when they were winning Super Bowls and picking 32nd overall.
Right.
Let's do this. Before we find the next one, let me tell you guys very quickly about Game Time. We all love going to games at any point. I know the football season is almost over, although we have playoffs if you are not in New England. And then the college football national championship is coming up on Monday, which we'll surely talk about on Monday's show. And if you guys are looking for tickets to any of those events, make sure you guys use Game Time. They have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier because it filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So make sure you guys head to Game Time for their lowest price, guaranteed, and other in-app features such as seat views, all-in pricing, and of course Game Time Picks, which again makes it even easier to save more on your sports tickets or any other tickets you are looking for, such as concerts, comedy, theater, or anything else. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
I'll pull this one up in terms of the free agent tackles. Jedrick Wills, not a bad player, but he's not great. And there's been some stories about his
buy-in
commitment level. Yeah, buy-in. And that's just not what this team needs right now. They need competitors. They don't need guys who are going to sit. So
he was he drafted to Tennessee?
Wills? Yeah. I thought Cleveland drafted him.
I thought there was one of those guys. Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong guy. I thought there was one of those guys that was drafted to Vrabel in Tennessee. Let me look it up.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like I know what you're talking about, but yeah, I'm good on Jedrick Wills. I'm all set on Jedrick Wills.
Titans draft history.
Oh, I know what you're talking. He's that tackle that got cut like a year and a half in, and everybody was confused why they drafted him. I know who you're talking about.
I'm not saying. Okay, maybe I'm just completely thinking of something else.
Are you thinking of Isaiah Wilson?
No, I thought it was one of these Browns guys we were talking about for some reason. I don't know.
I'm not seeing like any of their linemen that really ended up with the Browns, at least not recently. Dylan Radunes is still there. Is Nicholas Petit Frere on the Browns now?
He's a free agent. Maybe that's it.
I'm good with him. He's fine. He's not the answer.
No, he's.
I think you're thinking of Isaiah Wilson.
maybe. I don't know what I was thinking of, but yeah, I'm kind of good with Jedrick Wills.
They should be aiming higher than that. He doesn't solve the
That
answer for you.
sounds like a
Oh,
true.
you're thinking of Jack Conklin.
That's it. Yes.
It's like older.
That is it.
But he's still under contract. And if they're going to let Wills walk, which they probably are, now him and DeJuan Jones are your starting tackles. So I don't think they're going to move a starting tackle.
That has a Chooks a core 4 vibe to it in a sense. I'll let you take this one because I know this is one of your favorites. Opinions on Jack Sawyer.
Love him. Love it. Would love him late in the first round, early in the second. Gives them, first of all, leadership, tangible, that kind of thing, right? Guy's a warrior, guy you can build a program around. Up front, 3-down player. He's going to be on the field 80% of the time defensively, which is really good for defensive end. He's going to bring a physical edge. He can play the run. He got much better getting after the quarterback this year. He's not like a star pass rusher. I don't think you're getting a guy that's going to be like a 16 to 20 sack guy. I think he can be an 8 to 10 sack guy and play the run. And the idea is you kind of put him on that strong side and then you go try to find that elite pass rusher opposite him, whether it's Josh Sweat, maybe you double up if you have a really good free agency and it's Abdul Carter on one side, Jack Sawyer on the other, something like that. But they need cornerstone kinds of players right now. Jack Sawyer is a cornerstone kind of player.
He has had an awesome playoff. The one thing, the guys who are like all power, those edge rushers kind of scare me. And that, like, he's not the most twitchy guy. I think someone compared him. I forget who compared him. Someone kind of compared him to Rob Ninkovich.
I've seen that floating around, which isn't a bad comp. Look, I get where you're coming from with like the power thing, but Cameron Williams, people think is a first round pick, and he dominated Cameron Williams in that game against Texas. And, he was in the Big Ten. He was up against a bunch of good tackles. So
I just, the all power, like, I don't think I would trade up for Jack Sawyer, especially like late in the first round. But if he fell to you at one of your next 2 picks, he's probably going to be a second rounder now after this playoff. But I'm not going to move up for a guy like that. But I agree. He's had such a good playoff and he does kind of just bring that nasty to the defensive line. But the all power does worry me a little bit.
Well, that's why, again, if you draft him as the primary guy, you're asking him to do too much, and now you're in a bad position. If you draft him as the secondary guy, like Rob Ninkovich was playing opposite Chandler Jones, right? That's kind of what I'm pitching.
Yep. Let's see, what else do we got?
Has Scadaboo's stock risen too much for him to be worth the pick? I don't think so, just because there's so many good running backs in this draft. There's so many good running backs. But I'll say this, like, based off what Mike Vrabel said, I wouldn't be surprised if they take a running back higher than not. And that doesn't mean Ash and Gente. I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they should do that. Could the Ohio State guys be in play on day 2? Oof. Could Omari and Hampton be in play on day 2? I think so.
I don't know how I feel about day 2, but
I mean, let's look. If they're going to try to replicate the offense from Tennessee, you wouldn't want to see Quinshon Judkins in the Derrick Henry role.
I think I get what you're saying.
Montre is your spellback.
I think I like Henderson a little bit more than.
Do you? I like both of them. I really like both of them. You can sell me on that too.
Players. Well, where are you at with? He's going to the Senior Bowl with Ollie Gordon because he was like 2 years ago was a monster and he kind of fell off this year. And he looks like Derrick Henry. He's got like the huge quads and thighs and then like the short upper body. But where are you kind of at with him?
So I think a team's going to get really good value with Ollie Gordon. He was kind of a product of bad coaching this year. He had that awesome season last season, right? And then teams basically from day one were just stacking the box against Oklahoma State and daring them to throw it. And they just didn't. They kept running into really unfavorable situations. And so Ollie Gordon took a hit. That's going to happen in the NFL as well, but not to that extent. And you hope with Drake May that teams can't play that one-dimensionally against you. He's going to have to interview well, right? He had the issue with, I think it was a DUI, and I don't think he totally handled this season great in terms of the way it went for him beyond that. But if he interviews well, like I still think he's the top 5 running back talent in this draft. Doesn't have the production, not off this year for it, But you're right. I mean, 6'2", 225. We saw the the explosiveness last year. He was just in a really bad situation. He's going to be one of those guys where how much do teams look at the 2024 tape versus the 2025 tape, and how well does he interview?
Yep. And kind of same thing with like Donovan Edwards too. Like he was good compliment last year to Blake
Yeah.
Corum, and then the Michigan offense was just such a mess this year. He didn't have as good of a year. He'll
Well,
be
he
at the
was a
Senior Bowl too.
compliment. That one's a little different. He was a compliment. He also didn't he deal with like a lot of injuries.
Maybe this year. Yeah, but
I'm not
like Gordon was the guy in the backfield.
right.
Edwards,
I'm much more sold on Ollie Gordon.
yeah. Let's see, anything else? Maybe we can hit a few more. Back to the coaching staff. Do you have an ideal candidate for offensive coordinator? And Jack says, should McDaniels be a candidate? I think yes. At this point, it's wise to hear from Josh McDaniels. But do you have an ideal one?
I don't know if there is an ideal one. I mean, I was really starting to get convinced on Tommy Rees, but like I think McDaniels would be a good hire. Which one is it? I get him mixed up. Not the Packers head coach, the brother in LA. Is it Matt or
LaFleur?
Mike? I think Mike LaFleur, getting some of that Rams influence. Some people would say you could just get Nick Caley for that. I feel like we've been talking about Nick Caley for years now, and there's just something about him that they're not going to hire him. But Mike LaFleur, if you can get him to come over, would be interesting.
Their quarterback coach too, Stagone or something.
Dave Rangone, who was an NFL quarterback. Yeah. Mike Reese floated him as potentially a guy. I think he wasn't on Vrabel's staff in Tennessee, but he worked for Arthur Smith, so there is a connection there.
That's something like someone who's worked with quarterbacks or has been a quarterback, I think would be my kind of ideal thing, which is why Nick Caley, he's been a tight ends coach. He doesn't have that background of working or being a quarterback. So, McDaniels, we've obviously seen that. Mike LaFleur, I think he was a quarterback in high school or college, and then he's been a quarterback coach. He's someone too who's called plays, like he was the Jets offensive coordinator, so he has that experience. And then the QB coach from the Rams clearly has experience working with quarterbacks this year. So I would love one of those two guys from the Rams, because it just feels like everything they're doing out there under Sean McVay has been working. So I would love one of those two guys maybe, but
this is a player I like. We're getting a little deeper here. Ty Robinson out of Nebraska. Kind of like a day 3 Jack Sawyer-ish. Now he's a tackle. He's not an end, but he's another one of these guys that's just going to play a really physical brand of football. You might be able to make him like an early down end. He's 6'6", 310. Really good run stopper, sneaky athletic. He's not like Christian Barmore rushing the passer from the inside, but he's not a liability either. I guess if they're going to move on from like Daniel Ekuale, could he be a potential Daniel Ekuale replacement? Maybe. I like him though. Good player. Day 3 guy. He's not going to be that high impact player. He doesn't play the position. He doesn't have the athleticism to get to that level, but I think he can be a solid rotational player in the NFL. I do like Ty Robinson.
All right, let's end with this one. This is kind of an interesting one.
All right.
What do you think Gerard Mayo does next year?
I don't know. I have no idea, because I don't think he's going to get a job in coaching, because he doesn't have. It's not.
So my two theory, if he wants to stay in coaching, I think the two teams you might want to look at are the Pittsburgh Steelers, because we heard him say a couple times this year, like he called Mike Tomlin for advice. There seems to be some relationship there. And Tomlin, he gave Brian Flores a job after he had the whole lawsuit and everything. So maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers, or with Brian Flores and Kevin O'Connell, who he was in the same draft class with right here in New England. Maybe he joins that defensive staff. There was some overlap with Flores when he first started as like a general assistant. So, and maybe Flores leaves. I don't know if they would give Gerard the coordinator spot, but those would be my two spots if he wanted to coach still. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he just kind of lays low, and I don't know if he goes back to corporate lifestyle or just doesn't coach this year.
Yeah, I just wonder if, because of the way the Patriots were perceived around the league, if it's going to be tough. I could see Pittsburgh. He doesn't have a ton of connections. Does he do media? Maybe.
He can't do media with the way it went this year.
It's going to be tough after this year. He might have to take a year off.
Yeah, that will be interesting to see how that one kind of unfolds. But those were my two. If he wanted to coach, those were my two kind of connections I was thinking about. But we'll see if he gives it another shot. So we'll wrap that one up there. We'll be back next week. Hopefully, we will have some reported coordinator interviews to talk about. Let's see, and then the week after next week will be probably all Shrine Bowl. We'll have a lot of Shrine Bowl content for that. And then when's our first? When do we do our first mock draft? Is that after the Super Bowl? Is that when we did it
usually right after the Super Bowl.
So a couple of weeks after Shrine Bowl stuff, Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl stuff, we will, start our mock drafts. Probably one before free agency. I think that's how we did it.
Yeah, and then we'll just start rolling them after free agency.
Get a little better.
Especially this year, they're going to be really hard to do before free agency.
Definitely, because the whole picture could change with all this money they have to spend. So that looks like our schedule coming up. So again, we'll be back next week. Again, hopefully we have some coordinators and stuff to break down and talk about. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Turn on your notifications on Patriots Press Pass so you know when we go live. In the meantime, you can follow Alex on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. Head over to 985thesportshub.com for all his Patriots coverage over there. And you can follow me on Twitter at I am Brian Hines, and head over to patspulpit.com for our Patriots coverage online there as well. Thank you, everyone, for your questions today, tuning in tonight. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you guys next week.